Emma Carlyle stared at the papers on the kitchen table, her fingers trembling slightly as they traced the edge of what would soon become her new reality. The divorce papers had arrived that morning, tucked between advertisements and bills as if they weren't about to detonate her family's entire existence. 3 months since Richard had walked out, and now it was official. He wanted to end their 23 years of marriage. The suburban Boston home she'd once loved now felt like a museum of failed promises. Photos of their family vacations still lined the hallway, smiling faces that had no idea what was coming. Their 3 children, now adults with lives of their own, would have to face this new fractured version of their family. She picked up her phone and hesitated. Someone had to tell the kids before they heard it elsewhere. Richard should be doing this with her, she thought bitterly, but he'd made himself scarce, throwing himself into work and his new downtown apartment. "Mom? Everything okay?" Emma turned to see her youngest, Olivia, standing in the doorway. At 21, she still lived at home while finishing college, witnessing the slow collapse of her parents' marriage firsthand. Emma hadn't expected her home so early. "Your father sent the divorce papers," Emma said, unable to cushion the blow. Olivia's face fell. "He actually did it." She sat down heavily at the table. "What about counseling?" "He promised he'd try." Emma's laugh was hollow. Apparently, 3 sessions was his limit. Said his mind was made up. Olivia reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. "Have you told Matt and Abby yet?" "I was just about to call them." Emma glanced at the clock. "Maybe we should have them over for dinner tomorrow." "This isn't something I want to do over the phone." "I'll help you cook," Olivia offered, though her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Should we invite Dad?" The question hung between them. Emma swallowed her instinct to snap. "He should be here. It's his mess too." Later that evening, after making the calls that carefully avoided the real reason for the family dinner, Emma sat alone in the living room nursing a glass of wine. The text from Richard arrived just after 9. "I'll be there. Want to tell them together." No apology, no emotion. Typical. The next day brought a flurry of activity as Emma and Olivia prepared a meal nobody would remember eating. Matt was the first to arrive, his girlfriend Tara in tow. At 28, he was the spitting image of Richard, the same confident stance, the same easy smile that charmed everyone. The resemblance used to please Emma. Now it just hurt. "Mom, you're doing that hovering thing again," Matt said gently as Emma fussed with the table setting. "What's going on? You sounded weird on the phone." "Let's wait for everyone to get here," Emma said, avoiding his eyes. Abby arrived next, alone as usual. At 25, her middle child had always been the independent one, fiercely private about her life in New York where she worked as an editor. She hugged Emma tightly. "You look tired, Mom," she said bluntly. "Is this about Dad? Because I saw him last week, and he was being weird too." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You saw your father?" "He came to the city for a conference. We had lunch." Abby shrugged, missing the hurt that flashed across Emma's face. Richard hadn't mentioned seeing their daughter. The doorbell rang at 6 o'clock sharp. Richard had always been punctual. Emma steeled herself and opened the door. He looked good, too good. New haircut, expensive watch. He'd clearly been thriving in his new life. The realization stung more than she expected. "Hi," he said, awkwardly holding a bottle of wine. Her favorite. Thought this might help. They gathered around the dining table, the children exchanging confused glances as they sensed the tension. Emma couldn't eat, just pushing food around her plate while Richard made stilted conversation about work. Finally, Matt put down his fork. "Okay, what's happening? You two are acting strange, and it's freaking us out." Richard looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. This part, at least, they'd agreed on by text. He would start. "Your mother and I have something to tell you," Richard began, his business voice slipping into place. "As you know, we've been living separately for a while now. We've tried to work through our differences, but—" He paused, and Emma noticed he couldn't quite meet their children's eyes. "I've filed for divorce." The silence was deafening. Then everyone started speaking at once. "What do you mean, tried?" That was Abby, her face flushing with anger. 3 months is trying? I knew it," Matt muttered, reaching for Tara's hand under the table. Olivia just stared at her plate, already aware but no less devastated. "We wanted to tell you together," Emma said, finding her voice. "You deserve to hear it from both of us." "Why now?" Matt asked, directing his question at his father. "After all these years?" Richard shifted uncomfortably. Sometimes people grow apart. Your mother and I want different things now. That's corporate bullshit, Dad, Abby snapped. What different things? What changed? The moment had come. Emma looked at Richard, waiting to see if he would tell them the whole truth. When he remained silent, something inside her hardened. Your father's been having an affair with his assistant, she said quietly. For over a year. Richard's head snapped up. Emma, we agreed to tell them about the divorce, not to hide why it's happening. Emma's voice was steady now, fueled by months of pent-up hurt and rage. Jennifer is 29, by the way. Younger than you, Matt. The room exploded. Matt pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Abby started firing questions like bullets. Olivia began to cry silently. And in the middle of it all, Richard sat looking trapped and small, nothing like the confident man who had walked through the door. Is this true? Matt demanded. Richard nodded once, his jaw tight. It's complicated. It wasn't planned. Affairs rarely are, Emma said, surprising herself with the coldness in her voice. I was going to tell you, Richard said to his children, but not like this. Not all at once. When then? Abby challenged. When you marry her. When you have new kids. Richard flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Abby stood up, tears now streaming down her face. You've blown up our family, and you're worried about what's fair to you? The dinner that was supposed to be a controlled, mutual explanation had devolved into exactly what Emma had feared, raw pain and anger with nowhere productive to go. As Richard tried to defend himself, and the children processed their shock in real time, Emma wondered how they would ever find their way back to anything resembling a family again. The weeks following the disastrous family dinner settled into a strange new rhythm for the Carlyles. Emma found herself sleeping better, oddly enough. The truth was out, and despite the chaos it had unleashed, there was relief in no longer carrying the secret alone. Richard had retreated, calling each of the children separately to attempt damage control. Matt refused to speak to him. Abby took his calls, but kept them brief and formal. Only Olivia maintained regular contact, meeting him for coffee every Tuesday, torn between loyalty to her mother and the unwillingness to lose her father. You don't have to choose sides, Emma told Olivia one evening as they washed dishes together. He's still your dad. Olivia scrubbed a pot with unnecessary force. I know, but I'm still angry at him. Me too, Emma admitted. But I don't want that to become your burden. The phone rang, and Olivia glanced at the caller ID. It's Abby. Emma dried her hands and answered. Hey, sweetie. Mom, I need you to sit down. Abby's voice was tight. I just got off the phone with Dad. Emma braced herself. What happened? Jennifer's pregnant. They're getting married next month. The world tilted sideways. Emma reached for the counter to steady herself as Olivia watched with alarm. Mom? What's wrong? Emma couldn't speak for a moment, just handed the phone to Olivia, who listened and then swore loudly, something she rarely did. He said he wanted to tell you himself. Abby continued when Emma took the phone back, but he was afraid. Coward. How far along is she? Emma managed to ask. For months. Mom, I'm so sorry. After hanging up, Emma sat in stunned silence while Olivia paced the kitchen, ranting about their father's selfishness. The timeline meant Jennifer had been pregnant during their separation, possibly even before. The betrayal felt fresh again, a wound reopened just as it had started to scab over. Matt arrived an hour later, his face grim. They hadn't called him, but clearly Abby had. He brought a bottle of scotch and poured 3 glasses without asking. To Dad's midlife crisis, he said bitterly, raising his glass. May it cost him everything. They didn't drink to that, but they did drink. The following day, Emma called her lawyer, suddenly eager to finalize the divorce she'd been dragging her feet on. If Richard wanted his new life so badly, she'd stop standing in his way. She also called her sister Kate in Connecticut, who offered to come stay for a few days. You need support, Kate insisted. Don't do this alone. Kate arrived that weekend with a suitcase and a plan. You're getting out of this house, she declared. We're looking at apartments. I can't leave, Emma protested. This is our home. It's a museum of memories you don't need right now, Kate said gently. Besides, it's too big for just you and Olivia, who'll be graduating soon anyway. Emma knew her sister was right, but the thought of leaving the house where she'd raised her children felt like another loss on top of so many. Still, she let Kate drive her around to look at smaller places closer to downtown. They were touring a sunny two-bedroom condo when Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Can we talk?" "In person." "Important." She showed it to Kate, who scoffed. "Ignore him." But Emma couldn't. After 23 years of responding to Richard's needs, the habit was hard to break. She arranged to meet him at a coffee shop the next day, bringing Kate along for moral support. Richard looked terrible, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. Jennifer wasn't with him, to Emma's relief. "Thank you for coming," he said, then nodded at Kate. "Both of you. What do you want, Richard?" Emma asked, too tired for pleasantries. He took a deep breath. "I wanted you to hear this from me. Jennifer lost the baby yesterday." Emma blinked, caught off guard. Whatever she'd expected, it wasn't this. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. "The wedding's postponed," he continued. "Maybe indefinitely. We're taking some time." Kate snorted. Convenient timing. Richard ignored her. "Emma, I know I've handled everything terribly. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to apologize face to face. Not just for the affair, but for how I've treated you since we separated. You deserved better." Emma studied her husband's face. The lines she knew by heart now etched deeper with stress. Once, she would have reached for his hand, comforted him even in his self-inflicted pain. Now, she felt only a detached sort of pity. "I appreciate you telling me," she said carefully, "but it doesn't change anything between us." "I know." He looked down at his untouched coffee. "I just thought you should hear it from me for once." After Richard left, Kate squeezed Emma's hand. "You okay?" Emma nodded slowly. "Actually, yes." And she was surprised to find it was true. The news about the pregnancy loss spread quickly through the family. Abby called, wanting to know if Emma was all right. Matt sent a brief text. "Heard about Dad. You good?" Olivia was the most affected, crying for Jennifer despite never having met her. "It's just sad," she explained when Emma found her tearful in her bedroom. "Everything's so messed up." The strangest thing happened in the following days. The anger that had propelled Emma forward began to ebb, replaced not by forgiveness, but by something close to indifference. Richard's life, his choices, his consequences, they were becoming less and less her problem. She signed a lease on the downtown condo. She updated her resume, thinking about returning to the interior design work she'd abandoned when the children were young. She went to dinner with friends she hadn't seen in months, surprised to find conversation could flow without constantly circling back to her failed marriage. Then came the call from Matt one evening, his voice unusually hesitant. "Mom, I need your advice." Emma settled onto her couch. "What's going on?" "Dad called me today. He wants to meet, just the two of us." He paused. "I've been shutting him out, but I don't know if that's the right thing anymore." "What do you want to do?" Emma asked. "Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell. But..." Matt trailed off. "He's still my dad." Emma closed her eyes, remembering her words to Olivia. "Yes, he is. Would it hurt you if I saw him?" The question caught her off guard. "Matt, your relationship with your father is separate from mine. I would never want to come between you, no matter how angry I am with him." "Really?" He sounded skeptical. "Really?" Emma meant it. "He made a terrible mistake, but he loves you. That hasn't changed." After they hung up, Emma sat in the growing darkness of her living room, surprising herself with her own capacity for change. 6 months ago, she couldn't have imagined steering her son back toward his father. Now, she understood that untangling their marriage didn't mean unraveling the whole family. When Abby called the next day with similar questions, Emma gave similar answers. By the time she spoke to Olivia about it, a strange new perspective had begun taking root. Maybe her role now was to help her children navigate the broken landscape their father had created, not to make them choose sides in a war nobody could win. "I'm seeing Dad for dinner tomorrow," Olivia told her. "He wants to talk about the holidays. Would it be okay if he came to Thanksgiving? Not the whole day, just dessert maybe." Once, Emma would have rejected the idea outright. Now she paused. "Let me think about it," she said, surprising herself again. "I can't promise anything, but I'll consider it." Progress, she thought as she hung up. Small steps toward whatever came next. Thanksgiving arrived with a cold snap that frosted the windows of Emma's new condo. She'd been living there for just over 2 months, enough time to make it feel somewhat like home, though boxes still lingered in corners waiting to be unpacked. The kitchen was smaller than what she was used to, but she'd managed to prepare most of the traditional dishes, with Olivia and Abby arriving early to help with the rest. "The table looks beautiful, Mom," Abby said, admiring Emma's handiwork. Despite downsizing, Emma had kept her grandmother's china and silver, refusing to let those family heirlooms go to storage. Thanks, sweetie. Emma checked her watch. Matt and Tara should be here soon. And Dad's coming at 4? Olivia confirmed, a hint of anxiety in her voice. Emma nodded. After much consideration, she'd agreed to Richard joining them for dessert. It would be the first time they'd all been together since the disastrous dinner 6 months earlier. The divorce had been finalized just 3 weeks ago, a surprisingly straightforward process once Emma stopped fighting it. Richard had been generous with the settlement, perhaps out of guilt. Are you really okay with this? Abby asked, studying her mother's face. Because we can still call him and cancel. Emma smiled faintly. I'm okay. We need to find a new normal, don't we? The doorbell rang, and Matt arrived with Tara and a bottle of wine. Behind them stood Kate, Emma's sister, who'd insisted on being present as moral support. Reinforcements have arrived, Kate announced, hugging Emma tightly. You're sure about this Richard thing? As sure as I'll ever be, Emma replied. And he's only staying for dessert. The meal went surprisingly well. They avoided talking about Richard, focusing instead on Matt's recent promotion, Abby's latest editing project, and Olivia's upcoming graduation. For a few hours, it felt almost normal, as if the family hadn't fractured at all. At exactly 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang again. Emma took a deep breath and went to answer it, aware of the sudden silence that fell over the dining room. Richard stood in the hallway holding a pie and looking as nervous as she felt. Hi, he said. I brought pumpkin. Still your favorite, right? Emma nodded and stepped aside to let him in. He'd lost weight, she noticed, and his hair had more gray than she remembered. The atmosphere shifted instantly when Richard entered the dining room. Olivia jumped up to hug him. Matt nodded stiffly. Abby managed a tight smile. Kate made no effort to hide her disapproval. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, Richard said, his voice unnaturally bright. The place looks great, Emma. Thanks, she replied, taking the pie to the kitchen. Coffee's brewing. We'll have dessert in a few minutes. Richard followed her, leaving the others in an awkward silence. Need help with anything? I've got it, Emma said quickly, keeping her back to him as she arranged pie slices on plates. Richard leaned against the counter. Jennifer and I broke up, he said quietly. Emma's hands stilled for a moment before continuing their work. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not, he said with a sad laugh. And you shouldn't be. It was a mistake from the beginning. Emma turned to face him. Why are you telling me this? I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair. Maybe I wanted you to know I recognize what I threw away. Richard, Emma said carefully, we're trying to create a new way of being a family here. That doesn't include discussing your love life. He looked properly chastened. You're right. I'm sorry. The dessert portion of the evening was stilted but civil. Richard asked appropriate questions about everyone's lives. The kids gradually relaxed, and by the time coffee cups were emptied, conversation almost flowed normally. When Richard rose to leave, he thanked Emma sincerely. This meant a lot to me, he said, being here with all of you. After he left, Abby helped Emma with the dishes. That wasn't as horrible as I expected, she admitted. No, Emma agreed. It wasn't. Later, after everyone had gone, Emma sat alone in her living room, mentally replaying the day. 6 months ago, she couldn't have imagined sharing a holiday meal with Richard without falling apart. Now, she'd done it. Not without difficulty, but she'd done it. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Thank you for today. You've always been the stronger one. Emma didn't respond, but she didn't delete the message either. Winter passed in a blur of holiday parties, family gatherings, and, surprisingly, job interviews. Emma had updated her interior design portfolio and started putting feelers out, not expecting much after being out of the field for so long. To her shock, a boutique firm downtown had shown interest, impressed by her previous work and the fresh perspective she might bring. They offered me the position, she told her children over a Sunday brunch in January. Part-time to start, but still. Mom, that's fantastic. Olivia beamed. Does Dad know? Matt asked, then looked embarrassed. Sorry, not relevant. Emma shook her head. It's fine. No, he doesn't know yet, but I'll tell him next time we speak. That was another change. She and Richard now communicated directly about family matters rather than through the kids. It was formal and sometimes awkward, but functional. The job became Emma's focus through the winter months. It was challenging to re-enter the workforce after so many years, but the creative outlet energized her in a way she hadn't expected. Her colleagues were younger, with fresh ideas she eagerly absorbed, while they respected the experience she brought to the table. In March, Olivia received an acceptance letter from a graduate program in Chicago. She was thrilled but hesitant, aware that her departure would leave Emma truly alone for the first time. "I'm not sure I should go," she confessed to her mother. "It's so far away, and with everything that's happened." "Don't be ridiculous," Emma said firmly. "This is an amazing opportunity." "I'm fine, Olivia." Better than fine. It was true. The woman who had fallen apart at the kitchen table a year ago, staring at divorce papers, barely resembled the person Emma was becoming. Her calendar filled with work commitments, coffee dates with new colleagues, and the occasional dinner with friends she'd reconnected with. One evening in April, Emma attended a client reception at a hotel downtown. She was discussing a project with a contractor when she spotted Richard across the room. He was there with his company, apparently for a separate event in the same venue. Their eyes met briefly, and he nodded in acknowledgement. Later, as she was waiting for her coat, he approached her. "You look well," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Really well. Thank you," she replied. "The new job agrees with me. I heard. Abby mentioned it. I'm happy for you, Emma." There was an awkward pause. Once, they would have filled it with shared observations about the people around them, inside jokes, casual touches. Now, they stood as polite strangers. "How are you doing?" Emma asked finally. Richard shrugged. "Working too much. The usual." He hesitated. "I miss the kids. And sometimes, I miss our talks." Emma studied her ex-husband's face, surprised to find she could look at him now without that stabbing pain. "We had good conversations," she agreed. "The best," he said softly. "Emma, would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime? Just to catch up properly, as friends, or whatever we are now." The old Emma might have jumped at this opening, seeing it as a path back to what was lost. The new Emma considered it more carefully. "I'd like that," she said eventually. "But just coffee." Richard smiled, relieved. Just coffee. They set a date for the following week, and as Emma left the hotel, she felt strangely light. Not because she harbored hopes of reconciliation. That door had firmly closed. But because she recognized she could now interact with Richard as a person separate from the marriage that had defined them both for so long. Spring brought more changes. Olivia accepted the Chicago offer and began preparing for her move. Matt announced that he and Tara were engaged, planning a small wedding for the fall. Abby started dating a colleague from her publishing house, bringing him to family dinners where Richard was sometimes present. Coffee with Richard became a semi-regular occurrence. Once a month, always in public places, mostly focused on updates about the children. Occasionally, they ventured into discussing their new lives, careers, even books they'd read or shows they'd watched. It was a careful rebuilding of something that wasn't quite friendship, but wasn't animosity either. "You know what's strange?" Emma said to Kate during their weekly phone call. "I'm starting to see Richard as just a person, not the man who betrayed me or the husband I lost. Just Richard, with all his flaws and good qualities. Is that healthy?" Kate asked skeptically. Emma laughed. "Probably healthier than hating him forever. The kids need us to be civil, and honestly, it takes less energy." In June, they held a graduation party for Olivia at Emma's condo. Richard attended, bringing a thoughtful gift and making an effort to chat with everyone, including Kate. Watching him help Olivia open presents, Emma felt a complicated surge of emotions. Nostalgia for the family they'd been, grief for what was lost, but also growing acceptance of what remained. After the party, as Richard was leaving, he paused at the door. "Emma, I've been meaning to tell you. I'm seeing someone. Nothing serious yet, but I wanted you to hear it from me, not the gossip mill." Emma absorbed this news, searching for the jealousy or hurt she might have expected. To her surprise, she found only mild curiosity. "Thanks for telling me. I hope it works out for you." He studied her face, perhaps looking for signs of distress. Finding none, he nodded. "You too, you know. You deserve to be happy." As the elevator doors closed behind him, Emma stood in her doorway, considering his words. The past year had been about survival, then rebuilding. The thought of dating again hadn't crossed her mind. But maybe, eventually, it would. And maybe that was okay. Summer arrived in Boston with a wave of humidity that made Emma grateful for the central air in her condo. Olivia had left for Chicago 2 weeks earlier for a pre-program workshop, leaving Emma truly alone for the first time in decades. The silence had been jarring at first. No footsteps in the hallway, no quiet conversations on the phone, no one to share meals with. But gradually, Emma was finding her rhythm in solitude. She'd taken to having breakfast on her small balcony, watching the city wake up below her. This particular morning, she scrolled through wedding venue options that Matt and Tara had emailed, seeking her opinion. The couple had settled on an October wedding, just 4 months away, wanting something intimate but elegant. Her phone rang, displaying Matt's number. "Morning, sweetie," she answered, sipping her coffee. "Hey, Mom, did you get those venue links?" Matt sounded tense, unusual for her easygoing son. Looking at them now, the converted warehouse space is lovely. "Great. Yeah, that's our favorite too." He paused. "Mom, I need your advice on something wedding-related, but it's complicated." Emma set down her coffee. "What's going on?" "Dad called yesterday. He wants to know if Jennifer can come to the wedding." Matt's words tumbled out quickly. "They're back together, apparently. Have been for a few weeks." Emma's stomach tightened reflexively, though the news wasn't entirely surprising. Richard had mentioned ending things with the woman he'd been casually seeing, but hadn't explained why. Now it made sense. "I told him I needed to think about it," Matt continued. "Tara doesn't care either way. She's never even met Jennifer, but I don't want to make things awkward for you." Emma took a careful breath. "It's your wedding, Matt. Your guests should be who you want there." "That's not an answer, Mom. Would it upset you?" She considered the question honestly. 6 months ago, the thought of being in the same room as Richard's mistress would have been unbearable. Now, it was just uncomfortable. "I think I can handle it," she said finally. "If it's important to your father." "Are you sure?" "Because I'll tell him no if you want me to." "I'm sure." Emma surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "We're all adults. Besides, I won't have time to worry about them. I'll be too busy being the mother of the groom." After hanging up, Emma sat with the lingering discomfort of the conversation. Richard and Jennifer, back together. The thought still stung, but the pain was duller now, more like pressing on an old bruise than an open wound. She called Kate later that day, needing her sister's perspective. "He's got some nerve," Kate said predictably, bringing her to family events already. "It's been over a year since we separated," Emma reminded her. "And Matt should have his father at his wedding, with whoever makes Richard happy." Kate scoffed. "Listen to you, so evolved. Are you secretly taking tranquilizers I don't know about?" Emma laughed. "No, just trying to be realistic. Fighting it would only put Matt in an impossible position." "Well, I think you're a saint," Kate declared. "And if you want me to accidentally spill red wine on her dress, just give me the signal." The wedding preparations became the family's focus over the next few weeks. Tara's parents lived in Seattle and were minimally involved, leaving Emma to step in more than she'd expected. She helped select flowers, tasted cake samples, and accompanied Tara to final dress fittings when the bride's mother couldn't make the trip east. "You've been amazing," Tara told her one afternoon as they left the caterer's office. "I know this must be weird for you, planning a wedding right after your divorce." Emma smiled at her soon-to-be daughter-in-law. "Actually, it's been healing in a strange way. Weddings are about hope, aren't they? Even when some marriages don't work out." July brought a heat wave and an unexpected invitation. A colleague from Emma's design firm, David, asked if she'd like to join him for dinner. "Not work-related," he clarified. "More of a date, if that's okay." Emma had known David for months. He was the architectural consultant on several of her projects, a divorced father of 2 grown sons. They'd developed an easy rapport, but she hadn't considered him romantically until that moment. "I'd like that," she found herself saying, surprised by her lack of hesitation. Their date was pleasant, if slightly awkward. Both were rusty at romance, having been in long marriages before. But the conversation flowed, and Emma enjoyed herself enough to agree to a second date the following week. She didn't mention David to her children immediately, unsure whether it would develop into anything significant. But when Abby stopped by unexpectedly one evening and found Emma preparing for their third date, the secret was out. "Mom," Abby's eyes widened at the sight of Emma in a dress and heels. "Are you going on a date? You look amazing." Emma felt herself blush. "Yes, with a colleague from work. It's still very new." "Does Dad know?" The question caught Emma off guard. "Why would I tell your father about my dating life?" Abby shrugged. "I don't know. You two have that weird coffee thing going on. I thought maybe you talked about stuff like that." "We don't," Emma said firmly. And I'd appreciate if you didn't mention it to him either. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because it's private. Abby agreed, but the conversation left Emma unsettled. She hadn't considered how her dating might impact the delicate new balance they'd established as a family. More concerning was her instinctive desire to keep it from Richard, as if she were doing something wrong. She raised this with David on their date that night. He listened thoughtfully, swirling his wine. "Divorce is messy," he said finally. "The boundaries get blurred, especially when you're trying to stay friendly for the kids. But Emma, you're allowed to have a private life. That's the whole point of being divorced." His words stayed with her, a reminder that she was navigating unfamiliar territory. For 23 years, Richard had been her partner, the person she shared everything with. Creating separation, even now, was challenging. August brought a weekend trip to Chicago to help Olivia settle into her apartment before classes began. Emma was struck by her youngest child's transformation. Olivia seemed more confident away from the shadow of family drama, excited about her program in the new city. "You seem happy," Emma observed as they unpacked kitchen boxes. "I am," Olivia admitted. "It's nice to be somewhere nobody knows about our family stuff." Emma paused, a stack of plates in her hands. "Has it been that bad?" "Not bad exactly. Just everyone watching us. Matt's coworkers who knew Dad, Abby's friends who heard the gossip." Olivia shrugged. "Here, I'm just me." It was a perspective Emma hadn't considered, how the divorce had affected her children's social worlds, not just their family life. She'd been so focused on her own healing that she'd missed this collateral damage. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Olivia squeezed her mother's hand. "Don't be. We're all finding our way through, right? Besides, I've seen how much stronger you've become. That helps more than you know." They spent the weekend exploring Olivia's neighborhood, setting up her apartment, and talking more openly than they had in months. As Emma prepared to fly home, Olivia hugged her tightly. "I've been meaning to tell you," she said. "Dad mentioned he and Jennifer might drive up to visit me next month. Would it bother you if I showed them around?" Emma felt a momentary resistance, then let it go. "Of course not, honey. He's your father. Your relationship with him is separate from mine." On the flight home, Emma gazed out at the clouds below, reflecting on how much had changed in a year. The family she'd fought so hard to preserve had transformed into something different, but not entirely broken. Her children were finding their own ways to balance relationships with both parents. Richard was rebuilding his life, as was she. And perhaps most surprisingly, Emma was discovering that the end of her marriage hadn't been the end of her story, just the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. September brought a flurry of activity as the wedding date approached. Emma found herself in the middle of last-minute arrangements, balancing her growing workload at the design firm with urgent calls about table linens and photographer contracts. Matt and Tara had been so busy with their own careers that Emma had taken on more responsibilities than she'd initially anticipated. "You're basically the wedding planner at this point," David observed one evening as she fielded yet another crisis call about floral arrangements. They'd been seeing each other for nearly 2 months now. Nothing serious, but comfortable. David understood the complexities of her family situation and never pushed for more than she was ready to give. "Sorry about that," Emma said, hanging up. The florist confused the centerpieces with another wedding. "No need to apologize." David smiled. "It's nice seeing you in action. You're very efficient in a crisis." Emma laughed. "Years of practice. 3 kids, and a demanding husband will do that to you." The words slipped out before she realized it. The first time she'd mentioned Richard so casually to David. He didn't seem bothered, just nodded thoughtfully. "Speaking of which," he said, "have you decided if I'm coming to this wedding?" The question had been hovering between them for weeks. David had been careful not to assume, aware that meeting Emma's entire family, including her ex-husband and his once mistress, now girlfriend, would be a significant step. "I'd like you to come," Emma said slowly. "If you're comfortable with it." "Are you comfortable with it?" David countered. "It's a lot all at once." Emma considered this. The thought of facing Richard and Jennifer with David at her side was daunting, but also strangely appealing. She'd spent so long being defined by her marriage and its ending. Having someone who knew her only as she was now felt liberating. "I am," she decided. "But fair warning, my sister Kate might interrogate you." 2 days before the wedding, Emma received an unexpected call from Richard. They hadn't spoken directly in weeks, communicating only through brief texts about wedding logistics. "Emma, I need a favor, he began, sounding strained. Jennifer's sister was supposed to watch the kids during the wedding, but she's got the flu. Emma blinked. Kids? What kids? There was a pause. Jennifer's daughters. Sophia and Lily. They're 7 and 9. Another pause. I thought you knew. No, Emma said carefully. I didn't. How had she not known Jennifer had children? The realization struck Emma with surprising force. All this time, she'd imagined Jennifer as some young, carefree homewrecker. The reality, that she was a mother with responsibilities and a life as complicated as Emma's own, was disorienting. I'm sorry, Richard continued. I thought one of the kids would have mentioned it. What's the favor, Richard? Emma asked, redirecting the conversation. They're coming to the wedding now, but they'll need somewhere to sit during the ceremony and reception. I wanted to check if that would cause any issues with the seating arrangements. Emma closed her eyes briefly, summoning patience. It's fine. I'll speak to the venue coordinator tomorrow. They can sit at your table. Thank you, Richard said, sounding genuinely relieved. And Emma, I appreciate how you've handled everything. I know it hasn't been easy. After hanging up, Emma sat motionless, processing this new information. Jennifer had children. Children who might become step-siblings to her own kids if Richard and Jennifer's relationship continued. The family web was growing more complicated by the day. She called Matt later that evening, needing to hear his voice. Just checking on the final details, she said, not mentioning the call from Richard. Everything's under control, Mom, Matt assured her. Hey, Tara wanted me to thank you again for all your help. Her mom feels bad about not being able to do more from Seattle. It's been my pleasure, Emma said honestly. How are you feeling? Nervous? Not about marrying Tara, Matt replied. A little anxious about the family dynamics, though. Dad called to tell me Jennifer's bringing her kids. Did you know she had kids? So she wasn't the only one surprised. Just found out today, actually. He's been seeing her for over a year, and we're just now learning this. Matt sounded frustrated. Classic dad, selective with information. Emma felt a surprising urge to defend Richard. To be fair, we've all been figuring out how much to share about our personal lives. True, Matt conceded. Speaking of which, Abby mentioned you're bringing someone? Emma smiled at the careful way he phrased it. Yes, my colleague David. We've been seeing each other for a couple of months. Good for you, Mom. Matt's voice softened. I'm happy you're happy. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October Saturday. Emma spent the morning with Tara and her bridesmaids at the hotel, helping with last-minute preparations. Abby was a bridesmaid, elegant in dark green, while Olivia had flown in from Chicago the night before, bringing tales of graduate school adventures. Emma wore a silver-blue dress she'd spent weeks selecting, wanting to strike the right balance. Dignified as the mother of the groom, but not matronly. David arrived at the venue separately, giving her space to focus on her family obligations. The ceremony was intimate and moving. Emma found herself tearing up as Matt and Tara exchanged vows, struck by the contrast to her own marriage. They seemed so clear-eyed, so certain about what they were promising each other. She hoped their understanding of commitment would serve them better than hers and Richard's had. She was so absorbed in the moment that she barely registered Richard entering with Jennifer and 2 small girls, all of them slipping into seats on the groom's side. It wasn't until the reception that Emma found herself face-to-face with them at the receiving line. Richard looked much as he had at their last meeting, a bit grayer perhaps, but still handsome in his suit. Jennifer was pretty in a subtle way, dressed conservatively and looking nervous. The girls clung to her sides, wide-eyed at the celebration around them. Beautiful ceremony, Richard said, kissing Emma's cheek lightly. You've done an amazing job with everything. Thanks, Emma replied, then found herself looking directly at Jennifer. Hello, I'm Emma. The absurdity of introducing herself to the woman who had contributed to her divorce wasn't lost on her, but it felt necessary, a way of acknowledging what everyone knew while moving past it. Jennifer, the woman replied, her voice softer than Emma had imagined. Thank you for including us. The girls were excited to dress up. She nudged the children gently. Say hello to Mrs. Carlyle. It's Ms. Now, actually, Emma corrected without thinking, then immediately regretted it when Jennifer flushed. I'm sorry, I didn't. It's fine, Emma said quickly. Girls, there's a special kids' table with activities near the back. My niece Sarah is keeping an eye on the younger guests if you'd like to join them. As the line continued to move, David appeared at Emma's side, a steadying presence. Later, During dinner, he leaned close. "You okay?" That looked intense. Emma nodded. "Surprisingly, yes. It's strange, but meeting her makes it all more human somehow." The reception proceeded without drama. Emma danced with Matt, both of them misty-eyed. Richard gave a tasteful toast that acknowledged Emma's role in raising the exceptional young man we're celebrating today. The cake was cut, bouquets were thrown, and gradually guests began to depart. Emma was gathering her things when she noticed Jennifer standing alone, watching her daughters twirl on the dance floor with other children. On impulse, Emma approached her. "They seem to be having fun," she offered. Jennifer looked startled. "Yes, they are. They don't get to go to fancy parties often." An awkward silence fell between them. Then Jennifer spoke, her voice barely audible over the music. "I never meant to hurt your family. I know that probably sounds hollow, but it's true." Emma studied the woman's face, searching for insincerity and finding none. "Life is complicated," she said finally. "We all make choices we have to live with." "For what it's worth," Jennifer continued hesitantly, "he talks about you with a lot of respect. About the amazing job you did raising your children." Emma didn't know how to respond to that. Part of her wanted to say something cutting, to assert that Richard had lost the right to comment on her parenting when he'd betrayed their family. But the anger she'd expected to feel was surprisingly muted. "Take good care of your girls," she said instead. "They seem lovely." David found her shortly after, sensing her need for support. As they said their goodbyes to the newlyweds, Emma felt a complex swirl of emotions: pride in Matt, joy for his happiness, lingering sadness for her own marriage's failure, but also a surprising sense of peace. "You did it," David said as they walked to the parking lot. "Got through the whole day with grace." Emma smiled, leaning against him slightly. "Not just me. All of us. Maybe we're finally learning how to be whatever it is we are now." "And what's that?" Emma considered the question, watching as Richard helped his tired young charges into his car across the lot, while Abby and Olivia laughed together near the venue entrance. "Still a family," she said. "Just a different kind than we were before." The holidays approached with a swiftness that caught Emma by surprise. One moment she was clearing away the last of the wedding thank you cards from her desk, and the next, stores were filled with Christmas decorations, and the radio played endless carols. This year would be different. The first Christmas since the divorce was finalized, and the first where coordinating family celebrations would require actual negotiation. "We need to talk about Christmas," Abby said during their weekly phone call in early December. She'd become the unofficial family coordinator, the one who made sure everyone stayed connected. "Matt and Tara are going to her parents in Seattle for Christmas Day, but they'll be back for New Year's. Olivia is planning to fly in on the 23rd and stay until the 2nd. Emma made notes on her calendar. "And your plans?" "I'll be here in Boston," Abby confirmed. "But I was thinking, what if we did Christmas Eve at your place, and then Christmas Day at Dad's?" Emma's pen paused mid-stroke. "At Dad's? With Jennifer?" "And her girls," Abby added carefully. "I've spent some time with them recently. They're sweet kids, Mom." The revelation that Abby had been developing a relationship with Jennifer and her daughters was unexpected. Emma wasn't sure how to feel about it. "When did this happen?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "Dad's been inviting me over for dinner. At first, I was just being polite, but—" Abby hesitated. "The girls don't have much family. Their dad's out of the picture, and Jennifer's parents live in Arizona. They've never really had a big family Christmas." Emma closed her eyes briefly. She was learning that divorce meant constantly adjusting her expectations, discovering new ways that her family was evolving without her input or control. "You don't have to decide right away," Abby continued. "But Dad mentioned he'd like all of us there, even if it's just for dessert or something. He said to tell you that David is welcome too." That was unexpected. "He specifically mentioned David?" "Yeah," he said, and I quote, "Emma shouldn't have to do anything alone if she doesn't want to." Emma wasn't sure what to make of that. Her relationship with David had deepened since the wedding. He'd become a comfortable part of her life. They worked well together professionally and personally, enjoying quiet evenings and weekend outings without the pressure of defining their future. But introducing him to a Christmas gathering at her ex-husband's home felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she was ready to cross. "I'll think about it," she promised Abby. No guarantees. After hanging up, Emma wandered around her condo, mentally rearranging furniture to accommodate a Christmas Eve gathering. The space was smaller than their old home, but she'd made it her own over the past year. painting the walls in soft blues and creams, mixing favorite pieces from her previous life with new purchases that reflected her evolving taste. She'd been avoiding holiday decorations, unsure how to approach traditions that had always been tied to family routines. But now, with plans forming for at least part of the celebrations to take place here, Emma felt a spark of determination. She could create new traditions that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. The next weekend, she invited Kate to join her for a Christmas shopping expedition. They purchased a small but elegant tree, new ornaments in colors that complemented Emma's decor, and festive touches for the mantel and dining table. No more of those awful Santa figurines Richard insisted on displaying every year, Kate observed as they wrapped lights around the tree. Emma laughed. I never told you this, but I accidentally on purpose broke 3 of them when we were packing for the move. Emma Carlyle, you rebel. Kate's eyes widened with delight. It felt strangely liberating, Emma admitted, letting go of things that were never really mine to begin with. Over the next few weeks, Emma found herself busier than expected. Work had picked up dramatically as clients rushed to complete projects before year-end, and her schedule filled with holiday events, a party at David's son's home, drinks with colleagues, volunteer work at a shelter that her firm had adopted for the season. She'd almost forgotten about Abby's Christmas Day proposal when Richard texted her directly in mid-December. About Christmas. No pressure, but the invitation stands. 2 p.m. for dinner. David, welcome. Let me know. Emma stared at the message, unsure how to respond. She consulted David, who surprised her with his openness. If you want to go, I'm happy to join you, he said. I'm curious to see how this blended family of yours functions. That's just it, Emma replied. I'm not sure we're a blended family yet. Maybe we're just separate families who occasionally intersect. David considered this. Either way, I think it's healthy that you're all trying. My ex-wife and I can barely manage a civil conversation at our son's events, and that's after 10 years. Emma decided to accept the invitation, but with boundaries. They would attend for dinner only, not the entire day, and they would bring dessert, her contribution to the meal without taking over. She texted Richard back with these parameters, and he responded with a simple perfect. As Christmas approached, Olivia arrived from Chicago, bringing tales of graduate school triumphs and the easy confidence of someone thriving in a new environment. The 3 Carlisle women spent the 23rd preparing for their Christmas Eve gathering, cooking, decorating, and falling into the comfortable rhythms of family. Is it weird that I'm nervous about tomorrow? Olivia asked as they assembled a charcuterie board. Not our party, going to Dad's. If it is, we're all weird, Abby replied. I've been there several times, and I still feel like I'm navigating a minefield sometimes. Emma smiled at her daughters. We're creating a new normal. It's okay if it feels strange for a while. Christmas Eve was a success, intimate and warm, with Matt and Tara joining before their early morning flight to Seattle, and David arriving with mulled wine and small gifts for everyone. Emma watched her children laughing together in her new space and felt a sense of accomplishment. They were adapting, all of them. Christmas Day arrived with light snow that dusted Boston in postcard perfection. Emma spent the morning in her pajamas, exchanging gifts with Olivia and Abby, deliberately keeping things relaxed before the afternoon's more complicated gathering. At 1:45, David arrived to drive them to Richard's home, still the large colonial in Brookline where Emma had raised her children. She hadn't been back since moving out, and seeing the familiar driveway and front door decorated with a wreath she hadn't selected brought a momentary tightness to her chest. Richard opened the door before they could ring the bell, looking slightly harried but welcoming. "Merry Christmas," he said, ushering them inside. "Fair warning, it's a bit chaotic in here." The house had changed in subtle ways. New furniture in the living room, different art on the walls. But what struck Emma most was the noise and energy. Jennifer's daughters were racing through the hallway in matching Christmas dresses, shrieking with laughter. The formal dining room that Emma had always insisted on using for holiday meals had been abandoned in favor of a more casual arrangement in the family room, where a table had been extended with card tables to accommodate everyone. "Emma, I'm so glad you came," Jennifer said, emerging from the kitchen with an apron protecting her outfit. She seemed genuinely pleased, if slightly anxious. "Can I get you something to drink? Wine? Eggnog? Wine would be lovely," Emma replied, handing over the dessert she'd brought. "This is David. The introductions continued as Abby appeared from upstairs, helping to bring drinks and settle everyone. Emma found herself seated on the couch, one of Jennifer's daughters, Sophia, the older one, unexpectedly plopping down beside her. "Are you Abby's mom?" the girl asked, studying Emma intently. "I am," Emma replied. "And Olivia's and Matt's too." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "My mom says you're really good at making houses beautiful. That's your job." "Something like that," Emma said, smiling despite herself. "Our house was ugly before we moved here," Sophia continued candidly. "It was really small and the wallpaper was gross. This house is way better." Emma felt a strange twist in her chest. Not jealousy exactly, but something adjacent to it. This child was now living in the home she had created, benefiting from the life Emma had built and lost. "I'm glad you like it here," she managed to say. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant, if somewhat stilted at times. Richard had clearly gone to great lengths to make everyone comfortable, and Jennifer was a gracious co-host. The conversation flowed more easily than Emma had expected, helped along by the children's chatter and Abby's gift for easing tension. After the meal, as they moved back to the living room for coffee and Emma's dessert, Richard found a moment to speak with her privately. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I know it couldn't have been easy." Emma considered this. "It was educational." Richard raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Seeing everyone together like this, in the house we shared." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It makes it real in a way it wasn't before. Not just the end of our marriage, but everything that's come after." Richard nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. All the ways we've had to redefine ourselves." He glanced toward the living room, where David was helping Lily with a new toy while Jennifer and Olivia chatted on the couch. "He seems like a good man." "He is," Emma said simply. "You deserve that," Richard replied, a hint of regret in his voice. "Someone good." As they prepared to leave a few hours later, Emma felt a complex mixture of emotions. There had been moments of discomfort, certainly, catching glimpses of Jennifer moving comfortably through the kitchen Emma had designed, or seeing Richard in the role of stepfather to young children when their own were grown. But there had also been genuine warmth, moments of connection that suggested a way forward. In the car, David squeezed her hand. "You okay?" Emma looked back at the house, her past, growing smaller in the side mirror as they drove away. "I think I am," she said. "It wasn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" "To feel like an outsider," Emma admitted. "Or to feel possessive of that life, that house. But it's not mine anymore, is it? And that's okay." David smiled. "Growth looks good on you, Emma Carlisle." As they drove through the snowy streets toward her condo, her present, her future, Emma realized that the past year had taught her something invaluable. Endings weren't always failures. Sometimes they were just necessary transitions, painful but ultimately freeing. Her family hadn't dissolved when her marriage did. It had simply transformed into something different. Not better or worse, just new. She thought of Sophia's innocent observation about the house. "This house is way better," and found herself smiling. Maybe that was true of lives as well. Not that her new life was objectively better than her old one, but that it was better for who she was becoming. "Want to come up for a nightcap?" she asked David as they pulled into her building's parking lot. "I'd like that," he replied. "But only if you're not too tired. It's been an emotionally demanding day." Emma shook her head, feeling suddenly, unexpectedly light. "Actually, I feel more energized than I have in months. Like I've finally put down something heavy I've been carrying." And as they rode the elevator up to her condo, the space she'd created entirely for herself, Emma realized it was true. The weight of what had been lost was finally lifting, making room for whatever might come next.